The night was meant to be simple. Just a few hours of babysitting. A favor to a neighbor. Nothing more. Emma thought she knew what to expect. Spilled juice. Bedtime stories. The usual tired-eyed tantrums of a small child. But what unfolded that evening was far from ordinary. It was as if the universe had quietly shifted beneath her feet, pulling her from the shadows of routine and solitude into a world she'd long forgotten, the world of desire, attention, and unexpected connection. At 42, Emma had settled into a role that felt less like a choice and more like a default, the invisible caretaker, the dependable neighbor, the one everyone leaned on but rarely saw. Her life was filled with duties, her teenage daughter's soccer practices, the endless grocery runs, the work deadlines, and the quiet evenings spent alone, scrolling through her phone just to fill the silence. There wasn't much left for her anymore, especially not moments where she could feel truly alive. When her neighbor, Mr. Reynolds, had asked if she could watch his youngest son, Max, for the night, Emma said yes without hesitation. It was just a few hours, a chance to help out, and maybe a small break from her own empty house. She didn't expect anything to change. The evening began exactly as she thought it would. Max was a whirlwind of energy, chasing her around the living room, scattering toy dinosaurs and cars across the floor. His laughter filled the room like a warm breeze, a reminder of simpler times. Emma joined in the game, hiding behind the couch cushions and feigning surprise when Max found her. For a moment, the weight of her loneliness lifted, replaced by the easy joy of being needed. After a few rounds of hide and seek and a quick snack of apple slices and juice, which inevitably spilled, Emma coaxed Max toward bedtime. She read his favorite story, an old fairy tale about a brave knight and a clever princess, her voice soft and steady as she watched his eyelids grow heavy. When he finally drifted off to sleep, she tiptoed out, careful not to wake him, and settled onto the couch with a tired but contented sigh. Scrolling mindlessly through her phone, Emma barely registered the sound of the front door opening. Then, she felt it, a jolt in her chest, a sudden flutter of nerves. Her heart beat faster, though she tried to tell herself it was only the surprise of someone arriving home. But when she turned around, there he was, Jake, her neighbor's eldest son, home from college for the weekend. Emma hadn't seen him in over a year, and the boy she remembered had transformed into a man right before her eyes. Jake was taller now, broader, with a confidence in his posture that made her catch her breath. His deep brown eyes met hers, steady and warm, and for a fleeting second, the quiet of the room seemed to expand, wrapping them both in a bubble where nothing else existed. "Hey, thanks for watching Max tonight," Jake said casually, but there was a softness in his voice that caught Emma off guard. She smiled, brushing a stray lock of hair behind her ear, suddenly conscious of her worn jeans and simple sweater. She was sure she looked ordinary, maybe even a little frumpy compared to the polished college student standing in her neighbor's doorway. But Jake didn't seem to mind, or maybe he noticed in a way that made warmth bloom in her cheeks. Dropping his backpack by the door, Jake shrugged off his jacket, revealing a fitted t-shirt that traced the lines of his broad shoulders. He moved with an easy grace, familiar yet new, like someone who had grown into himself and was finally comfortable in his own skin. He plopped down on the couch opposite her, stretching out his long legs, and grinned with a teasing sparkle in his eyes. "You've always been my favorite neighbor," he said with a smirk. Emma laughed, the sound light and surprised. It had been so long since she'd felt this easy, this alive. Their conversation started casually. Jake's classes, his plans, the changes in the neighborhood. But beneath the surface, the air was charged. She found herself drawn to the way he looked at her, lingering just a little too long on her face, on her hands, on her smile. The attention was subtle but unmistakable, like a flame flickering to life after years of being buried under ash. As Jake shifted closer, their knees nearly touching, Emma's heart raced. She told herself to stay composed, to remember the boundaries, the age difference, the family ties, the simple fact that this was wrong. But the electricity crackling between them was undeniable. This wasn't just friendly warmth, it was something raw and urgent. An awakening she hadn't known she needed. They talked for hours, the conversation deepening beyond surface topics. Jake asked about her dreams, the things she'd wanted but never dared to chase. He listened with genuine curiosity, eyes wide and unjudging. No one had asked Emma those questions in a long time. It felt like being seen for who she was, not just the roles she played. When midnight crept in, neither of them wanted the night to end. The soft glow of the lamp painted shadows on Jake's face, highlighting the sharp line of his jaw and the warmth in his eyes. Emma caught herself staring, feeling vulnerable and exhilarated all at once. "You're beautiful," Jake said quietly, his voice barely above a whisper. It wasn't a rehearsed compliment but a simple truth, spoken like a prayer. Tears pricked at the corners of Emma's eyes, but she laughed it off. Embarrassed. "You're just being kind," she murmured. Jake leaned closer, his hand brushing lightly against hers. The innocent touch sent a jolt through her body. She remembered what it felt like to be desired, to be seen through eyes that admired every flaw and found it perfect. For a moment, Emma let herself lean into the feeling, into the warmth of his gaze and the electricity sparking between them. She was no longer just a caretaker or a neighbor. She was a woman again, wanted, alive, seen. As the night deepened, the line between right and wrong blurred. When Jake finally stood to leave, there was a hesitation in the air, a question hanging between them. Unspoken but understood. He smiled, that devastating smile she would remember long after, said goodnight, and disappeared into the guest room. Emma sat alone in the quiet, her heart pounding, skin tingling. Sleep seemed impossible. Every time she closed her eyes, Jake's face flashed before her, his voice telling her she was beautiful. Those words echoed in her mind like a haunting melody, stirring a loneliness she thought had been buried forever. Then, a creak from the hallway broke the silence. Emma froze, breath caught in her throat. The bedroom door, slightly ajar, moved again. Her heart hammered so loud she was sure he could hear it. And then, there he was, Jake, framed by the dim hallway light, his presence both shocking and somehow inevitable. Their eyes locked, suspended in a moment woven from all the things left unsaid. "I couldn't sleep," he whispered. Emma swallowed hard, torn between fear and longing. Part of her knew this was wrong, that she should send him back to the guest room. But the aching part of her, the part that had been untouched for far too long, nodded just enough to give him the invitation. Jake stepped inside, closing the door behind him, sealing them off from the world. The night had changed everything. Jake slid carefully onto the bed beside Emma, fully dressed, his presence both comforting and electrifying. The mattress dipped under his weight, and for a moment, they lay there side by side, a cautious distance between them. Every nerve in Emma's body was alert, but beneath the tension, there was a warmth radiating from Jake that slowly dissolved her fears. She turned slightly to meet his gaze, intense, tender, and unwavering. "You shouldn't be here," she whispered, her voice trembling with uncertainty. "I know," Jake replied softly, his eyes never leaving hers. "Neither of us planned this." But the invisible thread pulling them together felt stronger than reason, more powerful than doubt or fear. Jake reached out, brushing a stray lock of hair from Emma's face. His fingertips lingered like a feather, as if he was memorizing every detail. That small touch ignited a shiver that ran down her spine. When his lips finally met hers, soft, hesitant, reverent, Emma's defenses melted away. She leaned into the kiss, hands finding their way to his shoulders, clinging to him like a lifeline. Jake kissed her with a tenderness that spoke volumes, as if he understood the fragility of this stolen moment. His lips coaxed hers open, deepening the kiss, releasing years of loneliness and longing that had been bottled inside Emma's heart. His hands traced her arms, down her waist, pulling her closer with a reverence that left her breathless. Every touch was slow, deliberate, giving her space to pull away if she wanted. But she didn't want to. She needed this. She needed him. His mouth wandered down her jawline, along her neck, igniting sparks across her skin. Emma arched toward him, desperate to feel every inch of him, craving the warmth and intimacy they shared. Jake explored her with care and awe, as if discovering a treasure that had always been out of reach. Clothes fell away, piece by piece, until only skin and heat remained between them. Jake's hands roamed her body with reverence, each caress a silent prayer of devotion. When he finally entered her, it was slow and tender, each movement filled with care and respect. Emma gasped, overwhelmed by the depth of sensation, the fullness of him, the way he moved with such reverence, making love like it was a sacred act. Tears slipped down her cheeks, not from sadness, but from release and gratitude. They moved together in a rhythm as old as time, their bodies synchronizing in a dance that felt both natural and inevitable. Jake whispered her name like a prayer, his hands framing her face, holding her close as the pleasure built to a crescendo. When release finally came, it crashed over them like a tidal wave, leaving them trembling and breathless, tangled in each other's arms. The world outside ceased to exist. There was only the steady beat of their hearts and the quiet hum of shared connection. For a long moment, they lay wrapped around one another, the weight of what they had done hanging silently in the air. But there was no regret, no shame, only a deep sense of rightness and belonging. Jake pressed soft kisses to Emma's forehead, cheeks, and lips, murmuring sweet nothings that made her heart ache in the best possible way. In his arms, Emma felt seen, not as a caretaker, not as a neighbor, but as a woman worthy of desire and love. The night stretched on quietly around them, the house holding its breath as they found a fragile sanctuary in each other. For the first time in years, Emma felt whole again. Morning crept in slowly, sunlight filtering through the curtains in muted streams. Emma stirred, feeling the unfamiliar weight of Jake's arm draped over her. For a moment, she allowed herself to sink deeper into the warmth, pretending the complications didn't exist, that she could hold on to this feeling without consequence. Jake's steady breathing grounded her, a reminder that someone had seen her, touched her, loved her, even if just for a night. But reality seeped back in with the morning light, cruel and unrelenting. Emma was not a woman free to fall into a lover's arms without thought or guilt. She was a mother, a guardian of trust and family. Jake was young, full of life and possibilities, and their connection, no matter how intense, was a fragile thing. Guilt twisted her chest even as her body ached for the closeness they'd shared. Carefully, she slipped out from under Jake's arm, the cold air filling the space where warmth had been moments before. He stirred but did not wake, his relaxed face etched in soft morning light. Emma studied him silently, the curve of his mouth, the way his lashes rested against his cheeks, and 1,000 questions raced through her mind. What had they done? What did it mean? Could they pretend it never happened? Bury it under the silence of dawn? Dressing quietly, Emma felt each step away from Jake as if tearing herself apart. The house felt heavier, filled with an unspoken weight that settled around her like a storm. She gripped the kitchen counter, trying to steady her breath, to summon the version of herself that could make sense of this mess. Coffee brewed, its rich aroma grounding her for a few fragile moments. But then Jake appeared in the doorway, rumpled and uncertain, and her breath caught in her throat. Their eyes met, and silence stretched between them, too vast for words. He stepped closer, his hand reaching out instinctively, then halting mid-air as if unsure he still had the right to touch her. About last night, he began, voice raw and hesitant. Emma shook her head, cutting him off gently. She wasn't ready to hear it, not yet. If he called it a mistake, it would shatter something delicate inside her. If he said it meant something, it would terrify her even more. Turning away, she busied herself with pouring coffee, her hands trembling just enough to spill a few drops. Jake crossed the distance between them in 2 strides, covering her shaking hand with his. She refused to meet his eyes, afraid of what she might see, pity, regret, or worse, tenderness she felt she didn't deserve. "You're not alone," Jake whispered. Those words cracked open the dam she'd held so tightly for years. A broken laugh escaped her lips, and tears spilled freely down her cheeks. Jake pulled her into a steady embrace, holding her without trying to fix or explain. He simply let her be. When the storm inside her finally eased, Emma wiped her face, still trembling. Jake cupped her chin, forcing her to look at him. "I don't regret it," he said fiercely. "Not 1 second." His honesty both soothed and terrified her. She wanted to believe him, to wrap herself in the safety he offered. But the voice of doubt screamed louder. How could this end well? He was young with his whole future ahead of him. She was a brief detour. A chapter he would eventually outgrow. Still, when he leaned down and kissed her, slowly, tenderly, like time itself had paused, Emma let herself forget for just a little longer. They spent the day in a haze of stolen glances and cautious touches. Jake stayed near but never pushed. Simply there whenever she faltered. They cooked breakfast side by side, their hands brushing, the air thick with unspoken words and unsaid promises. When he laughed at a silly joke Emma made, the sound filled the house with lightness she hadn't felt in years. But beneath the laughter, the tension simmered, an undercurrent of fear and longing they both tried to ignore. The weight of impossible choices pressed down on Emma's shoulders. She knew this couldn't last. Love, or whatever fragile thing had blossomed between them, wasn't always enough to bridge the gap between dreams and reality. That night, as they sat together on the couch, Jake reached for her hand. Emma held it tightly, savoring the feeling even as tears blurred her vision. Maybe they weren't meant to last. Maybe their story was just a fleeting moment, beautiful, tragic, and impossible. But it was theirs, and for now, that was enough. Morning light spilled softly through the curtains, painting the room in gentle gold. Emma woke slowly, the unfamiliar weight of Jake's arm still draped across her waist grounding her in a fragile moment of peace. For a heartbeat, she allowed herself to sink deeper into the warmth, pretending this moment wasn't tangled in complications, that she could hold onto it without consequence. But reality, as relentless as the morning sun, began to seep back into her consciousness. She was no longer just a woman caught in a stolen night of passion, she was a mother. A woman who carried the weight of years lived and lessons learned. Jake was young, full of dreams and possibilities, and their night together was a fragile secret hanging between two worlds. She turned to face him, memorizing every detail, the curve of his lips in sleep, the softness of his brow, the way the light caught his lashes. "We can't stay like this," she whispered, her voice trembling with the weight of truth. Jake's jaw clenched, a silent battle raging behind his eyes. But he nodded slowly. He was a man with a life to build, and she was a woman who had lived long enough to know that love wasn't always enough. Letting go, as much as it tore at her heart, was the only kindness she could offer. They spent the morning wrapped in quiet closeness, speaking little but holding on fiercely to the fleeting connection they'd found. Every touch was a reminder of what was real and yet impossible. Emma traced her fingers over Jake's face, committing it to memory like a sacred keepsake. When the time came for him to leave, the air thickened with unsaid words. Jake stood at the door, suitcase in hand, the sadness in his eyes mirroring her own. "You made me feel seen," he said softly. "You made me feel loved." Emma closed the door behind him with a quiet finality, her forehead resting against the cool wood. Life would move forward, as it always did, but she would carry this secret place inside her, a memory of a night when two broken souls found each other and, if only for a moment, remembered what it meant to be whole. Days turned into weeks, but Emma couldn't shake the ghost of that night. The house felt emptier, the silence deeper. Her daughter noticed the change in her mother's eyes, something distant yet alive. A flicker of a story untold. Jake's messages came sporadically at first, cautious and gentle, as if afraid to shatter the delicate bond they'd forged. Each word was a thread pulling Emma back into that hidden world. A reminder of what had been stolen and what could never be claimed. They both knew their paths were diverging, his filled with college plans and future dreams, hers with responsibilities and a life grounded in reality. Still, the connection lingered, a bittersweet ache neither wanted to forget. One evening, Emma found herself standing by the window, watching the neighborhood lights twinkle against the darkening sky. She wondered what Jake was doing, if he thought of her as much as she thought of him. Her phone buzzed, and her heart leapt. A message from Jake appeared. "No regrets. Just gratitude for you." She smiled through tears, the words both healing and haunting. Emma understood now that some connections aren't meant to last forever. They're meant to remind us who we are beneath the roles we play, to awaken the parts we thought were lost. That night, as she finally drifted to sleep, Emma felt a quiet peace. The memory of Jake's touch, his whispered words, and the night they shared was no longer a burden but a gift. A reminder that she was still alive, still worthy of love, and still capable of feeling deeply. Life would go on, with all its complexities and contradictions. But Emma carried a secret spark within her, a quiet flame that no one could ever take away. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss our exciting stories.